Hey Joe Rogan, it's Dancing David. I'm here at Barton Springs in our hometown of Austin, Texas. Fantastic place for people to get together and hang out and collaborate and be peaceful with each other. And so this video is in response to your recent conversation with Peter Thiel about evolution of our species and how did we get to be humans from apes. So I have some ideas about that I'd love to hear your feedback on, so let's give it a try. So I think a couple things that may or may not be studied by lots of folks are the concept of cooperation through music or simply rhythm. And then, and that I think potentially led to more use of our vocal cords, and then the language, the concept and the aspect of using our vocal cords to create language as we know it. I'm referencing that because you mentioned language specifically, or Peter mentioned language specifically in the video. The question is, how do we get to language from just making sounds? And so I think maybe one possibility is if we look at just what does a being or a species need to survive. You have three basic things, right? Shelter, food, and procreation. And I think maybe as the planet changed, the climate changed, we need to, as apes move around the planet, to find more any of those three things, right? Food, shelter, or procreation. So let's just start with food. If you look at a giraffe, the reason it has a long neck is because it needs to reach high food. And if you look at any ape, and the evolution of any picture of apes into humans, what you see as the most defining feature is the posture of the being, right? So it starts really all hunched over, and then we get slowly over time more and more vertical. So I think that vertical could be caused by the idea of reaching more food. And I think there are also other factors, such as you mentioned, Joe, when you spoke about apes having hierarchy and structure and communicating and networking. And so I want to build on that for a second, where I think that it's very likely that they started to grunt in rhythm to do things together, either hunting or hiking, right? We always say left, right, right in the military for the people to step at the same time, to move in harmony with each other, to create something that they couldn't create alone. So I'm thinking that maybe the apes started with that concept because they were striving for one of the three things, food or shelter or procreation, probably food. So once we started grunting and collaborating in that way, it can evolve to more and more forms of communication. And posture can come from, like I said, reaching for food, but it can also come from the idea of different frequencies being available to your brain. So a lot of people don't talk about this, but some people do, and there's a great video by Amy Cuddy about posture and hormones, right? And so posture affects our hormone creation. And when we're fearful or when we're fighting all the time like animals and protective, we have this posture. When we're more safe and loving, we have this posture, right? So I'm thinking as we got more and more shelter and more food reserves, we could feel less fearful and more safe and therefore have another posture. I'm kind of skipping around a little bit. Let me go back. Another aspect of grunting in synchronicity is the concept of rhythm and music. And like I was saying, music also has a way of influencing our hormones and our brain chemistry, just like posture does. So I think it might be feasible that we moved from grunting to clacking rocks together, to clacking sticks together, to creating rhythms so that we could do things together. And from that, you can evolve into different rhythms and essentially Morse code with sticks, for example, which is a language without your vocal cords, right? And over time, as our posture got better because we were more sheltered, like in caves, and we had the fire, where we could move to colder climates and therefore need more shelter because it was colder, and therefore we had fire, and therefore we gathered in more groups. And then gathering in more groups then, of course, also changed your neurobiology and your hormones. So this change of our environment from cold from really hot to cold to being together, from being outside to being inside, to having fire, to having music, to having, as you mentioned in the video, maybe meat or other things that might change our chemistry. All of that, I think, helps evolve the the being into something other than what it was before, because it's new input, right? And where I'm driving at, when we look at our posture as it relates to the apes and how it is vertical instead of all hunched over, is that that's how an antenna is designed. It's straight up and down, right? And so when we align our spine, which is a electromagnetic field in perpendicular to the electromagnetic field of the Earth, now we have a current induced in our spine that we have when we're straight up, that we don't have when we're curved. So if you look at any antenna design, you can see that the most antennas are straight, not curved, so they can access the lines of force in a particular way. And so this is interesting because it kind of maybe goes into one of your other points about the idea of were we connected to from aliens or some other higher consciousness. Well, I think it might be feasible that as you use the mushrooms or the other elements that you talked about in the video, and as our spine became more erect, which is a core principle of yoga and meditation and higher consciousness, we were able to tune into other frequencies coming at us from the universe and be able to realize and become aware of things that the other musculoskeletal structure that's hunched over was not aware of. And I think lots of people talk about this, right? Edison talks about it and Einstein talks about it, where there's this time when you're falling asleep where you could access other frequencies or thoughts that are coming to you from consciousness, if you will, or maybe from other beings in your own space, however you want to define that. And so I think that all those ingredients came together in a way over thousands or millions of years to create this upright posture, and then a change fundamentally in our relationship to the antenna concept of our fluids in our spine becoming an antenna, and therefore feeding other ideas and feeding other chemistries into our body. And I'll wrap up by saying one more thing about music, which is it leads to dancing. And dancing, if we look back at the history books, is a way that cultures use to interact with other cultures. So you can see that tribes, when they were trying to become friendly with other tribes, one way is through violence that you spoke about a lot. Another way is through dancing and through collaboration and cooperation, right? So I could imagine there was a time where there was a tribe and they couldn't mate with each other anymore. The tribe was just too small, and then you had inbreeding and you had to mate with another tribe so that the genes would be healthy. So how do you introduce yourself to another tribe without violence? Well, one way is through dancing. And you'll see through the history books that countries have used the concept of dancing and music to build relationships and build resonance with other countries of unlike cultures quite frequently. And that's a tradition. So I think that maybe that started when we were gathering in larger groups than the apes do, and that caused all these biological changes. And then we had music, and then we had dancing, probably before language. And then eventually we created language because our throat, which is able to create these sounds that no other animals are able to create, became a physical structure through that evolution, that other animals just don't have that structure to be able to create these sounds in the tongue and the lips and the mouth to be able to create that, right? Just like you were talking about with the pyramids, being able to channel energy from the universe down into the planet, turn it into electricity. It took that structure, just like the antenna structure, or any kind of structure, to be able to channel information. And so those are my thoughts. Hope that's helpful. Look forward to your input. Anybody else who wants to comment, I would appreciate any thoughts that you have on this idea or ideas that I'm proposing here. This comes from my 30 years of dance experience and music experience and bringing people together and bringing joy through music and collaboration and connection, not through violence, and through good posture, which is core to good dancing. So it's all very correlated and integrated into what I hope and I think will be a very positive evolution of our species going forward. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.